Show me the works.
I'll give you a sound tour.
We are in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, first of all, at the galleries of Chez Max and Dorothea. Chez Max and Dorothea is a nonprofit foundation based here in LA and in Seillans, southern France. It's named after the surrealist artists Max Ernst and Dorothea Tanning. The mission of the foundation is to recover the house that they built in the south of France and turn it into an artist residency, research center, promoting surrealism in contemporary art. The house that Max Ernst and Dorothea Tanning built is in the south of France in Seillans. Here in Los Angeles, we have basically an outpost of the foundation to promote the foundation and to have this gallery space, exhibition space to promote contemporary artists and as it connects to surrealism. I co-curated this current exhibition with Bridget Nicole Grice, the director of Chez Max and Dorothea. So I'm only involved with this particular exhibition. This exhibition is called Daniela Gallois and Benjamín Serrano. Serrano and Gallois were both artists who lived in Tijuana, the border town in north of Mexico, not very far from here. And they both lived and worked there for their entire lives. In 1966, Serrano found himself studying in Paris, studying fine art, which is where he met Daniela Gallois. Daniela was born in France, she was French. They fell in love. She flew to meet him in Tijuana, and the rest is history. So they were together for some time. Eventually they divorced, they separated, but they stayed close and stayed friends for the rest of their lives. Daniela never went back to France. She stayed in Tijuana, lived there for the rest of her life, painting and living there. So although the artists exhibited during their time, Serrano has certainly reached a little bit more of a exposure in terms of his career in the art world. Gallois a little bit less so. But the goal of this exhibition is to really highlight their work, bring it to a broader audience in contemporary art that it hasn't had before. If you live in Tijuana or San Diego, that border region, they're well known enough there, but really in other art centers like Mexico City or here in the US, their work is not very known. So one of the main goals of this exhibition is to promote their work, bring it to a broader audience, and really give it the place that I think it deserves in contemporary art and its ties to 20th century modernism and postmodern art as well, because they kind of their work kind of bridges the gap, I think, between modernism, pop art, postmodern work. They really kind of hybridize a lot of different references in terms of medieval iconography in terms of Gallois, because she was French and she was influenced by European art. In terms of Serrano, his references to Mexican folkloric art are really strong. But they really syncretize all these different references to create this super unique, I think, very idiosyncratic work that I think could have only happened in a place like Tijuana. I think there's a reason they never left Tijuana, even though they traveled, and Serrano was educated in Europe and other parts of Mexico in his art education. But I think Tijuana always lured him back, and Gallois stayed there for the rest of her life. It wasn't necessarily the best place for them to live, to promote themselves in their career as artists, but I think as artists, it was a very influential and inspirational place to be. So Tijuana, I think, as a place is very in the subtext of all of this work for them. For the curation, I spent a long time meeting with different collectors who own all of this work. All of this work is really owned by collectors who were either family or close friends of both artists. And it was a really amazing adventure for me to go through this research process. I grew up in Tijuana, that's where I'm from, so I was already familiar with these artists. So I was super excited to bring them to LA and have other people enjoy the work as well. We have one big sculpture here, one big polychrome wood sculpture by Serrano. He made a lot of wood sculpture in his time. We have an old carousel slide projector showing a lot of some documentation of some of his sculptural work, but we do have just this one wonderful big wood sculpture by him. Gallois made some sculpture, mostly painting, and I'm pretty happy, I think, with the selection in terms of Gallois' work, because it shows a broad range of her time period and her styles. She was really, really prolific. The friends, family I've talked to her with about her, she was painting all the time. She was drinking and painting, drinking and painting. They both, unfortunately, suffered from pretty debilitating addiction to alcohol. Serrano only lived to be 49 because of it. She lived into her 60s, but it was their companion, unfortunately, for their entire lives. Gallois' work is really spread all over Tijuana and San Diego. She was an icon of Tijuana at the time, I think. People would see her walking down the streets. She would be carrying her paintings, her drawings, going kind of door to door, selling her work. She would literally walk into people's offices or storefronts to sell her work, and everyone knew her. She was really beloved and well-loved and liked. And so for this reason, there's work by Daniela Gallois all over Tijuana and San Diego. I kept knocking on doors in my research process and finding more and more work as I went along. It was like playing whack-a-mole. The more I looked, the more I found. But I'm really happy with the selection. I think it shows a good range of her work, her different styles, her themes. And Serrano as well. There's a little bit less selection of his work is a little bit harder to come by. He lived a shorter life. Even though he did produce a lot, it's harder to find his work and bring it. But I think we have a good selection of Serrano's work as well in terms of showing his art practice, his variety of styles and mediums and topics. And the goal was to bring them together. They did show together during their time when they were alive. They even collaborated a little bit. They made some sculpture work together. But in a somewhat romantic sense, we wanted to bring them together and show them together as artists and as people. There's a nice tie to the foundation itself, because the foundation is named after Max Ernst and Dorothea Tanning, who were a surrealist couple. And we thought it would be a nice gesture to bring them here to this space and to this foundation.